My impression of sort of the museum landscape out there in terms of public trust, I think they do by and large pay attention to that, like the charismatic megafauna, whether it's dinosaurs or say at the Museum of the Rockies, or if it's early rhinos, such as at the John Day Fossil Beds at their Interpretive Center in Badlands over there by Rapid. I think people are very aware of what draws people in, what brings people in through the doors. So I think that culture of engagement is there, and they do put in the investment, as far as I've seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's in place. Unless I'm misunderstanding what you're asking, I think I am.
No, like you're kind of not, but like maybe a little bit. I guess what I'm saying is that you go to the Chicago Field Museum,
Yeah,
$36 to get in, right? If I wanted more people to pay $36, I would put a T-Rex. I mean, like, and they do have a T-Rex.
Yep.
They have Sue, but like,
Yep.
Look at what that did to the Chicago Field Museum's bottom line, right? It like the numbers are out there somewhere. Maybe you'll look them up or something, Andrew. But pre and post Sue, it was like crazy the amount of income that they generated off that dinosaur.
Yeah.
So I'd figure by virtue of that, because museums are not just exhibitions. Museums are, like we were talking about, repositories, they're laboratories, they're all these other things.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like it would behoove these institutions that are already kind of like hundreds of millions of dollars sunk into them to like, kind of fund more of these digs.
Well, again, it's all historically contingent, if you have a curator who's interested in the evolution of early mammals, then the collection practices will reflect that. And that might include collecting in the Cretaceous, like the Hell Creek Formation, where there are dinosaurs. And generally when people are out there, they'll collect more than just the thing they're interested in. And so dinosaur fossils will find their way into a museum collection. This happened with the Burke Museum with the Tufts Love Rex.
The what Rex?
Tufts Love T-Rex. So it's a beautiful, it's a partial skeleton, but with a complete skull. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's on public exhibit. And that was collected, I think discovered and collected during a survey of the Hell Creek Formation. So the goal was to understand the entire ecosystem, not just to get some particular group of animals in terms of fossils and such. In terms of my own goals in the field, so we're usually out there for a month. We collect in the Hell Creek Formation, and we collect everything. We collect the fish, the dinosaurs, the birds, the crocodiles, the other reptiles, plants as well. And I work in collaboration with other scientists to understand the stratigraphy of our area of the Hell Creek Formation, and also understand the flora as well. And so a lot of these sort of field expeditions are collaborative and multidisciplinary and multi-institutional. So on my permits, there's at least 3 institutions involved, although I am the permit holder. So yes, I agree. I do think that most museums do understand the importance of charismatic megafauna to get people in the door. It's not always T-Rex. Wouldn't it be great if it was? But not always. But in the meantime, the thing not to lose sight of is that field expeditions reflect the research priorities of the people, of the PIs leading those expeditions. And that it might be a very wide variety of interests and specialties that may not always result in, finding dinosaurs. You might have people interested in, maybe finding that T-Rex, but finding a fantastic locality of trackways, for example. And then a lot of energy and time will be put in getting those data documented into a public trust. So there's contingency here too. You don't already know really what you're going to find in the field. I go out with a certain set of objectives, but turning one corner and finding, one rare or intriguing fossil might change the entire direction of a day or a week or a whole month. You just don't already know yet. But you have to go in with sort of flexibility of mind, but keep sort of the big goals in mind, not to lose sight of those. But sometimes you find surprising things that have scientific payoff.
Yeah. While we're on museums anyway, and I'm going to switch back to what we were initially talking to before this tangent that I led. I take full responsibility for
That's fine.
Us on this tangent. What I feel like people would be shocked to know what percentage of dinosaur bones in a skeleton are actual bone on display. Can you like kind of talk about that?
Yeah, well, it's very unusual to find 100% complete dinosaur, except in, or basically any fossil, except in very specific geological settings, such as a very deep lake or a warm, shallow lagoon where there's very little water movement. So we get the perfect Archaeopteryx skeletons from the Solnhofen in Bavaria. We get the feathered dinosaurs from China. Those are in deep lake deposits. Deep and cold waters that inhibits bacterial destruction of soft tissues. So we get the whole damn animal plus soft tissues, internal organs, skin, feathers, that sort of thing. But by and large, dinosaur skeletons are incomplete, and they can range from, say, 100% to one bone. So everything in between. I designed the dinosaur exhibit at the Dinosaur Discovery Museum in downtown Kenosha. And that exhibit shows the evolution of birds through meat-eating dinosaurs. And it's one of the largest exhibits of meat-eating dinosaurs in North America. So we have 21 theropods on display, and it's a high number, I know, because I count the theropods on exhibit in other museums. So we're one of the biggest exhibits of this sort of thing. What we have on an exhibit aren't real fossils. They're casts of actual fossils that are directly molded from actual fossil bones. So they're exact duplicates of surfaces of fossils. And I want the public to know, well, how complete are the skeletons really? That's something you usually can't tell, because bones that are patched in are usually painted the same color of the bones, so it all ties together. But still, the question remains, how complete is the thing really? And so I had each company that did the mounts for us paint all the reconstructed bones flat black and the casts of actual bones to match the original color of the fossil. And so at a glance, a person can see that the Carnotaurus, say, doesn't have legs and feet. They can look at, I don't know, the Acrocanthosaurus and see it as a complete skull, but its backbone is not complete, this sort of thing. And I think that's really helpful and useful for people. I'd like to take a full disclosure approach to the public. You know, they ought to see through our eyes. And not all museums do that.
There's a Carnotaurus there?
Yep. We have a Carnotaurus, and it's, I think, the only one or one of only two that's mounted in a full run.
Why is Carnotaurus so cool?
It's just so strange.
Yeah.
It's a combination of the bizarre and elegance. So they have short skulls and very deep skulls with these little teeth, and they have huge shoulder blades with stupid little arms. The arms are so stupid that the upper arm bone, the humerus, is basically normal length, but the entire forearm is shrunk down to length of wrist bones. So you've got sort of this stupid little
kind of like
stump.
A basset hound.
You got stupid little, spiky fingers sticking out of this lump. That's the elbow. And it's just a bizarre animal, but also it's very elegant. Long tail, sort of a long back, relatively long neck, but this dumb little head with horns. That's why it's called Carnotaurus, because it has these huge horn cores above its eyes. So it's a very interesting looking animal, very strange, but there's an elegance there too. I wanted to show that off, to have it in a full run. And that posture was based on an ostrich in full run. So I used Muybridge. He did all the photographs of like ostriches running, people walking, horses galloping.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, so that Muybridge is my was my reference for that particular mount, and also the Gallimimus, which we have in a full run too.
Cool. Well, okay, so we got to talk about the collecting of the fossils that end up in private collections. Just really quick, how does that work? So I'm going to bring us back to Carnotaurus in just a second here.
Right. I don't have really any direct insight into that. The basic route is that there are commercial companies who sell fossils for profit, and they collect not on state land or federal land, they collect on private land. And usually there's some arrangement, usually a financial arrangement with the landowner that will let them onto their land to, prospect for fossils. And then fossils get collected. And from that point on, my understanding is that either the company can offer the fossils, say, prep them and offer them for sale through their own websites, or maybe have fossils prepped through a middleman, and then the complete, sort of mount after that would be offered to an auction house. But for me, all that's a black box. I've never observed that directly. I don't have any special insight there. So, commercial folks would be able to, explain this much better than me. But the important thing is the type of land on which the collection happens. Now, in the United States, private land includes, in terms of ownership, includes subsurface ownership of fossils found on land. Mm-hmm. This is also seen in many other countries in the West. But just as many countries in the West protect vertebrate fossils in particular on all land, whether it's crown or government land, province or state land, and also private land. So for example, half the provinces in Canada have legislative protection of vertebrate fossils on private land. So if, say, a landowner in Alberta comes across a dinosaur weathering out on their property, they get in touch with a point person who's usually at the Royal Tyrrell Museum up in Drumheller, and they'll come out, examine the fossil, and if it's something of importance or significance, a crew will come out and collect, and that fossil will go to the appropriate repository, probably the RTMP or maybe some other public trust in state. So the important thing to keep in mind is that the American example is not really representative of what's happening elsewhere in the world. Many countries do protect their fossils, and just in terms of society, civic culture, it's a given that there are these things that do not enter the market. So that could be archaeological, that could be paleontological. I was at the National Paleontological Congress of Mexico a couple of years ago. I was one of several keynote speakers. One of the first talks I saw was by a Mexican scientist who sort of presented a summary of legal protections for vertebrate fossils in Mexico, Central and South America. And 90% of countries have laws in place that make sure that the fossils get to public trust. There's a few exceptions, but I, was pleasantly surprised to see the extent of that to our south. So the United States situation is not altogether typical, but at the same time, it's not an outlier. Mm-hmm. There are other countries where, fossils can be, bought and sold, this sort of thing. Morocco is a really great example. There's a thriving market there.
That's such an interesting one because Morocco, it's a gray market. Technically, I think the law is written that they do belong to the crown. But there's such a trilobite market where they're just yeah, this is doing some really good shit for our economy. So we're just gonna, I think that's pretty fascinating. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is a lot of the fossils are, in a perfect world, all the fossils that are on the market come from private land, collected by people who own that land or have access to that land.
Yeah.
all fossils that are collected by paleontologists, a lot of those come from public land, but some of them also come from private land.
That's true.
And then you have like the kind of intermediary area, right, where private landowners will donate fossils to museums, or some museums will actually buy the fossils from private collectors.
Yeah, that's true.
Going back to Carnotaurus, I think that's a great example of what you were talking about, because is Carnotaurus from Argentina?
Yes.
And Argentina has like very strict laws. I mean, you kind of already summarized it, but what are the laws in Argentina?
Okay, I can't, that I don't know off the top of my head.
Nobody's going
to.
But do not take this as, broad strokes.
I can't speak to specific countries, but just in general, the expectation is that those fossils go to a public trust.
Yeah.
And, this is also the case for China, Mongolia, France, Italy. So this is, global.
Yeah.
This approach to a nation's natural heritage, just treat it as a global heritage. But in terms of fossils making their way into public trust, there's many routes. As you mentioned, some fossils are bought off the shelf outright. That's not unheard of. Fossils can be donated, this sort of thing. So, there's several avenues for a fossil to get into a public trust.
For the full episode we got this clip from, click that top video there. For more clips, click that playlist right there. You got time for one more, man. Tell them there was traffic or something. Ooh, tell them there was a bear. I was going to be like, how big was the bear? It's a good excuse.